Welcome to the Rabbi and The Shrink. This is Dr. Margarita Gurri, Dr. Red Shoe, and my favorite rabbi,
Rabbi Yonason Goldson.
And today we are blessed. This is Susan Rooks, the grammar goddess. I've been hearing about her for forever, and so have you as an audience, because the rabbi loves your word of the day. And so welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me. Yonason, I can't get over it.
Well,
we are thrilled to have you.
We are thrilled to have you. You were on our list from the beginning. We're delighted you could join us. So let me tell a little bit about you. And I'll put all your links. In fact, I'll put the links right now. You're kind of all over the place. Your only goal is to help people look smart and sound smart, just as they are, which I think is amazing. So hopefully you'll do that for us as well. I love your blogs. I love your videos. You are an amazing coach. What is your one-to-one coaching? What does that mean?
It means that sometimes a company doesn't have the time, or somebody doesn't have the time to sit with a big group, but just wants to find out a few things privately. And so I'll sit for an hour or so, or 30 minutes on Zoom, and we'll go through what that person actually needs in terms of American grammar or business writing or communication skills.
Oh, that is way cool. And then you do training, and you're a LinkedIn expert. This is kind of amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, LinkedIn has been very good to me. So yes, I learned to teach the basics, nothing deep diving, just how to set up a profile effectively.
Wonderful. Well, the rabbi and I are both big into being careful with our choice of words. It doesn't always show when we speak, especially me, but we at least value words. Rabbi, what did you have in mind when you said, we got to have Susan Rooks?
Well, I am a devotee of George Orwell. Oh. And Orwell, among other things, was particularly concerned about the impact of language on not only culture, but on our own thinking. You know, we tend to think that we have ideas and then we express those ideas in words. But Orwell said it's really the other way around. We think in language. So if we don't have command of our language, we don't have command of our thinking. And as another great, wise person that I like to quote, Humpty Dumpty.
What you do?
Humpty Dumpty says to Alice, when I use a word, it means precisely what I want it to mean, no more, no less. And I think that really describes much of our culture today, that people use words the way they want them, what they want them to mean, not what they do mean. And that creates confusion, an inability to communicate with each other, and consequently a breakdown of culture. And that's why the way we express ourselves, I believe, is fundamental to ethics. And that's why, Susan, I was very eager to have you on to talk about preserving the value and the integrity of language.
So where do we start, Susan?
Heck if I know. Okay. Something that you said, Yonason, we use words in our head to describe things before we get out there. I've learned over time in my few years on the planet that if I call myself a dumb broad, I will start acting dumb, and I will start thinking I'm dumb versus saying, okay, whoa, you made a mistake. You'll live with it, move on. Or if I call someone else, and we've all met a couple of people in our lives that we have not liked. Not liking is fine, but not calling them names is not fine. That's not fair, because then it reinforces our dislike in a way that I don't think is necessary. And I'm guilty of it. I've done it. I've called somebody up and thought, no, wait, I'm sure he's got good qualities somewhere. So language is a funny thing. The other thing is what I might say means to me this. What you hear, what you take in, what your brain works with means that. And then we end up back and forth, and yet we're being as clear as we know how to be in that moment. Language is not 100% perfect.
Well, thank heavens. I'm a psychologist, and for years I had a private practice, and now I coach and train and advise all around the world. And the one thing we do is same as with the rabbi, same as you, is we listen. How people present a problem shows they're thinking of it, but if they could learn to use different words, it updates their thinking. So I often say, people need to update their template. How do they describe something? And
I like that.
Dolly Parton is one of my favorites. And she, has this whole idea is be yourself, but do it on purpose. And I think words that she uses help us feel good about ourselves without putting others down. Same as Gloria Stefan. Instead of saying, I'm breaking up with you, it's terrible, her songs are, I wish you the best. And I love that. So what is the power? Why are words so powerful, Susan Rooks?
Probably because our ancestors way back pointed to a rock and somebody said some version of a word, a sound that meant that thing. And we humans simply have taken that in. I mean, I believe other animals have different ways of expressing language, no question, or ideas anyway. But we all think that what we see is real. We think the way we describe it is real to the entire world. And I've learned over time, teaching communication skills, that what I'm thinking is not automatically what you're hearing or what you're understanding of it. I mean, I can remember my 16-year-old daughter years ago, way back years ago, coming flying into the house, screaming, yipping, yapping, yay, and I remember saying something close to, when you're upset, stop yelling at me. And she looked at me in horror, went flying up to her room, and later said, Mom, you misinterpreted everything. I just won an award at school, and I was excited. And that taught me a huge lesson about what I'm seeing, thinking, hearing, feeling. And the reality, it was so, it took us a few weeks to get over that one. 16 years old, they're not all that forgiving.
But that was cool that she could say it and that you could hear it. That's way cool.
We did that the next day or the day after. It wasn't instant. It couldn't have been. She was just so right in what she was doing. I just misinterpreted it completely. And it taught me a good lesson that I don't think I completely got until I was a lot older, but it was the beginning of understanding what I see, feel, and know may not be yours.
Well, this is where we have to be so careful, because how many fights, how many arguments, how many catastrophes can be traced back to simple miscommunication? Because I know exactly what I'm saying, and you know exactly what you're hearing. And there could be a chasm of confusion between them.
As a 5-year-old once told me, it's not my fault you're too dumb to get it. And that 5-year-old had a point, but at the same time, it wasn't very well said. And we talked about that. I have some good words for you from Aya. I like you, dear Susan. Those are her words.
Yeah.
And I love that. So I'm going to quote Susan. This is my favorite Susan Rooks quote. I tell you, I have lots of Susan Rooksisms. Words are free. It's how you use them that may cost you. I love that. Tell me more about it. I didn't
make it up. I found it somewhere and I thought,
you didn't make it up?
Gosh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I didn't make it up. Nice try. I wish
it's a good one though.
It is.
Very good. So what are the mistakes people make in terms of ethics and words? Why do we get it so wrong?
Unless we're told we're wrong in a way that we can take in, I don't think we would even know. I just look back at everything, and there's often a better way to say something that if once we understand we're wrong, I think, and you're a psychologist, so you know that, the defenses go up.
Yes.
And it can be very hard then to hear unless it's expressed very, very carefully. Back when I was working in an office, I remember I was teaching a customer service workshop, and they were saying, we bring people in and we tell them how well they've done, but they leave and they don't feel like we really praised them. What are we doing wrong? Well, if you had asked me, I'm going to tell you, but I didn't come up with this. I just heard another woman in the group say, what we tell them is you really did very well. You did A, B, C, and D, and here are things you can do better. And we all agreed that's not flying. It's meant well, but it's not flying. And she said, I put in a 4-letter word in front of the word better, and it changes the whole dynamic. The word is even.
Even
These
better.
are things you could learn to do even better. And everybody in the room went, a couple of people didn't think it was going to work. I've learned over time that is incredibly effective, because what they're saying is, everybody can learn to do things even better, but you're already doing a really good job. And we walk out thinking, wow, and we don't get what they said. We very seldom pick it apart and say, whoa, look what she said. She said even. We walk out thinking, okay, then that was pretty good. That was a pretty good review. And I've learned that people can learn how to do that if they want to. But I know that if somebody says, can I give you some feedback? My instant is, sure. But there's a wall slowly building.
Well, that's like, can I be honest with you?
Oh,
Don't lie straight to my face, please. My other thing is, and I think men and women communicate differently because of the way we're raised and culture and stuff. But one of my least favorites, I work with a lot of women executives and women in different areas of life. One of my least favorite things that women do is can ask a question. Yes, next. One and done.
When I was teaching, and I still do it occasionally, my students goes, can I ask a question? I say, you just did.
Yeah, see, you just did. Who's got
Now,
another question?
Frequently, you'll say, can I ask another one?
Yes,
just did.
Yes.
Smile,
Sooner or later, they might get it. After a while, the other students will start correcting them.
So I think there's a big risk involved when we're trying to communicate. You took this amazing risk with your daughter because you adore her and you're clearly a reasonable human being. But most of the time when we're with our kids, we're not always necessarily 100% reasonable. I mean, we're doing the best we can. Sometimes the walls go up. If you have enough teenagers, after a while, you get calluses on your feelings. And so it's just easier to say, oh boy, she's really mad at me. Look at her veins popping. Oh yeah, what did I say and do? And after a while, you get more used to it, right? Those of us who've raised a bunch of kids or who have certain family members who are a blessing, right? Certain family members help us to get calluses so we can listen better. The risk that we take in listening, how do they show in our language? If we get it right and we take a risk, what is it that we say and how do we say it that reaches people more effectively?
I'd start with a smile every time if somebody actually reached me, because it's a universal. It doesn't mean the same thing in every culture. I understand that. But for many of us, the smile is, okay, she's not really mad at me, I think. We're not picking it apart, but we're knowing it in our heart and everywhere else in here that, okay, I think that's going all right. But I do think a smile is huge for people to be a little more relaxed and not just one of these, but a real genuine smile and openness over time. And a lot of this isn't going to happen the first time we have a disagreement. I've taught with the word even, I say, it's not going to necessarily be perfect until you've done it a few times. But over time, you're going to get a reputation as being a reasonable person. Therefore, conversations are based on that value, not she hates me or not she never listens to me. It takes time, as far as I can see, to form a good relationship that we dare to be honest without being hurtfully so.
You mentioned,
if that answers the question.
No, you mentioned Dolly Parton earlier, and my favorite Dolly Parton quote is, if you see someone without a smile, give them one of yours.
I like that.
And in Jewish history, we have two of the most prominent sages were named Hillel and Shammai.
Yep.
And Hillel was known for being very easygoing and sort of accommodating and patient. And Shammai was known for being very strict and maybe hyper-disciplined is a word. But what's interesting is that one of our most famous teachings is from Shammai, and many people don't know it's from Shammai. And that is, greet every person with a pleasant expression. And so Shammai was not, despite being disciplined, despite being strict, he wasn't walking around grumpy and cranky and scowling and grimacing. He understood that you can have standards, you can be very particular, you can be very demanding on yourself and set very high standards and still be pleasant and still show people that you recognize the divinity in them with a smile, with a pleasant demeanor.
And that makes you approachable too. I live in a small village right on Buttermilk Bay, which I love. And my friend and I walk our dogs. We will often wave at somebody in a car, hey, hi, how are you? Just a big smile. We say to each other, who's that? Hell if I know. I don't know. But we smile because why not? Why not just give them a big smile and a wave? We might know them. We can't tell sometimes with the cars, the dark glass. And right now it's spring since the beach community. So a lot of people are coming in. We honestly don't know. But so what? Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Walking away going, do you know what her name is? No.
That's really funny because my daughter-in-law was visiting here in St. Louis the first time, and she's from New York, and we were out as a family up for a walk, and going down the street, there was this fellow who was building a wall in his side yard.
Yeah.
And my wife says, "Wow, you're doing a really nice job," and back and forth, and we walked off, and my daughter-in-law said, "You know him?"
No.
No. And you talk to people that you don't know? This was so foreign to a New Yorker.
Well,
Whereas in our neighborhood, this is the Midwest where you chat with people, you get to know people. Doesn't matter if you have, that's just part of the human connection that makes life so wonderful.
oh, it is. I smile at babies in the carriages and supermarkets. I mean, there's nothing like a 6-month-old giving you this. And the mother going, oh, and I'm going, oh, we don't want that baby so bad.
These days, as long as you're 6 feet away with 2 masks on, everyone will let you.
Well, you can't see smiles right now.
No, you can't. But I've seen
the
people
unfortunate
draw
part.
smiles on theirs. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So, speaking of pleasant, you're the grammar goddess. So, what is the impact of grammar mistakes on a connection? Because some people just speak really in an interesting way, whether it's where they're from or it's English like my mother never spoke of the English particularly well because we're from Cuba, but she was incredibly charming. So what is the negative or positive impact of different kinds of grammar mistakes in a connection, human connection?
I think it depends on who is actually doing it, because I only speak one language, and that's English. I can read a little Hebrew, I can do a little Hebrew, but I cannot converse in Hebrew. I can't converse in Spanish or French or Italian. I recognize a word here and there. So when somebody comes and is clearly speaking a language that wasn't the first, I'm honored. I'm tickled to death. I don't care how poorly somebody speaks. They're speaking a language I grew up in, and even I will make an occasional error. And the context, if we're just having fun, I'm going to say gonna, G-O-N-N-A, or gotta, G-O-T-T-A, because what the heck? It's human. It is totally human connection. If I'm in an interview, okay, there's a whole other deal right there. Now I'm never going to say gotta or gonna. I'm going to be very careful because it'll matter in that context. But human to human, even when I read, and as an editor, I'm reading constantly, and I always look at the background of the person who's sending me the document. If somebody says I'm a really whiz at American grammar, okay, you're in trouble. Promise you that you're in trouble, because now you have a standard to live up to. I'm okay with people not having perfect grammar, because here's the deal. I know my narrow slice of life. I know how to do this. I read everyone else's stuff and I'm in awe of what they know. And so if it's not grammatically correct, big whoop, that's what they come to me for. I look at that and think, you know that stuff? I don't know a lot about psychology. I know a little populist stuff. We all do. But do I know what you know in it? No. And if I were to read something and it was a period out of place or a quotation mark, so what? Put done. It's not a problem for me. And I don't think it should be a problem in many cases, because that's not a sign of intelligence.
Well, it is
the thing we
I
might
love
not know
the
how to
way-
do perfectly.
I love your approach to it. I love the context and your openness. We've been talking about diversity and inclusion and cancel culture. You cancel all of that out. I mean, you're very open. How did you get that way? What's the secret?
Well, number one, I'm an adopted kid. And most people know that I was adopted at 3 days old. And I got parents who tried their darndest. My mother had a very rough upbringing, so she was not what you'd call perfect mother. Then again, neither was I a perfect mother. I'm not sure there is one. But the thing they did that I didn't know what a gift it was, my parents loved traveling. And they would take trips to the islands back in the day. They'd go to Europe. They went to Spain. They came back with pictures of themselves with locals. And I'm a little kid. I'm 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. I don't know if the locals liked them or didn't like them. I don't know that maybe they're going to get a tip for being in a picture. I don't care. I look at happy faces, and they were brown and they were black, and there were a couple of Asians here, and there were different people. And my folks always were smiling, always. And if they didn't like someone, I never heard it. They always talked about the trip, the people, the fun. So I took that in as typical. I'm a nice Jewish girl from Marblehead. We had nobody who wasn't white, and we had very few Jews. So it wasn't like I ran into a need to learn it beyond what my parents gave me, the gift of everybody matters. And by the time I realized that, oh, wait, that's not a world view automatically, I didn't care. That was mine.
Well, I can see why all the leaders and writers love you. What is the best way they can reach you? I put up your email, I put up your website. What's the best way to reach you?
LinkedIn, probably. I think some of you
Right.
know I live on LinkedIn, but certainly my website's there. It's got my email. Yeah, that's just how it is for me. I just love the diversity. I love the fact that we have so much to learn in the short life that we have.
And it's one of the blessings, there's a lot to be concerned about with social media.
Yeah.
But there's a blessing there that we can do what we are doing right now.
Yeah.
I never would have met my wonderful co-host, the doctor, had we not been invited by a mutual friend to be on a panel together.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be here. And I wouldn't know you, Susan, if we hadn't come in contact through, I think it was the 360 community that we're both part of.
Yep.
And every time you go on LinkedIn, there's another opportunity. I mean, I went on yesterday, and when we're recording yesterday, and someone had posted a recent article that I had in Fast Company magazine, and I just got a whole new set of connections based on that opportunity. It's that serendipity that we have the opportunity to meet people we wouldn't have met, to communicate in ways that wouldn't have been possible before this technology existed.
Oh, yeah.
And to rejoice in that. I mean, I want to go back to a point you made, and I love the question, Doctor, about grammar errors, because I'm a grammar snob, and I really get annoyed when people butcher the language when they should know better. If you're an anchor on a news program, you should know how to speak basic English, right? But what annoys me no end from someone like that to someone who, as you say, has struggled to learn the language and doesn't have it perfect, it can be quite charming and quite endearing. And there are personalities who make part of their brand is their inability to use the language properly. So there's plenty of room for flexibility. And it all goes back to that idea of accept people from where they're coming from. Sorry, shouldn't put from at the end of the sentence. But the first thing that the Bible teaches us about human beings is we're created in the image of God. And what does that mean? It means look for the godliness in people. Look for the best in people. Look for the nobility. Look for the positive characteristics. Because if you do, and you find those first, then those less attractive elements may become less abrasive, less disturbing, less upsetting, because you already have a broader context in which to relate to them.
Yeah. The only people I get annoyed with are people who are editors in any sort of thing, or professional writers who don't take the time to, even a comment on LinkedIn. I mean, I'll go back and change my own comment when I notice I have a typo, because it's my brand. It's how I present myself. Those are the only people, because that's our world of corrections. And darn it, if we're going to look silly there, why would anybody want us to be? I've made mistakes. I've had typos. I'll look back. Oh, edit, done, good. But other than that, I don't care if somebody's not perfect in grammar. It's a science to know, just the way everything else is that you know, and that everybody listening here knows. I don't know your stuff. I'm thrilled when I can learn something new. It's fun.
It is fun. Is there a difference in the kind of communication errors that people have now than 10 years ago?
I think we're a little more abrupt. The texting kind of thing well, I'm grateful for texting because it at least gets the point across, even if it's not done very well. But other than that, I don't know that I've noticed it particularly. Yes, the more I do editing, the more I see errors, but they probably were there before and I just wasn't focused. What do they say? You buy a blue car and every car you see for the next month is the blue car, the one you just bought. I have trouble reading books now. I read and I go, Yahoo. No, that's not, no, wrong phased. Nice try, wrong phased. But yet I don't know how to write a book. I've never written one in my life. I'm thrilled when people can write books. How do you get the whole thing done? I don't know.
Well, you've written some lovely blogs. I think you could put those together and make a book.
I probably could. It's been suggested. It's like, when am I going to do that?
You write beautifully. And I've watched some of your videos and read your blogs. It's all fascinating. I mean, I didn't know someone could write something about a comma and the poor colon, the misunderstood colon and comma. I mean,
Pity the poor semicolon. Yep. Mm-hmm. Pity the poor semicolon.
Very funny about the abuse that these punctuation elements get. It's funny as all get out. So
Well,
Charlotte says, going back to the rabbi's initial question of words meaning, different things to different people. How can we cross the bridge between people? Good question, Charlotte.
Well, just one thing comes to mind. When I was in Britain and staying at a bed and breakfast, and as I was turning in for the evening, my host said, would you like me to knock you up in the morning? Now in America,
yeah, thanks.
that has a very different meaning. And as one of my Israeli neighbors, when he was in America, and he was being a guest at a family, and they offered him seconds, he said, no, thank you, I'm fed up. Now, remarkably, in that story, his host got very offended.
Oh,
now,
that's too bad.
I don't know how you can be so dim, frankly, to not recognize that this was somebody who was not a native English speaker, because the second time it happened with a different host, they laughed and they told him, well, that's not what that means. So again, it just goes back to giving people, if I hear something, and let's even broaden it beyond the cultural differences. If someone says something to me that I find offensive, that I want to take exception to, my response should be, I beg your pardon? Could you explain what you mean? There was a story in the news, it was probably about 10 years ago, about a college professor who he got fired or forced to resign because in a conversation, an interview, he used the word niggardly, which means stingy.
Yeah.
Well, it also sounds like a word we don't use anymore. And even after it became known that, well, he actually used a regular English word, people still weren't satisfied. Well, he should have been sensitive not to use that word. He might have been sensitive not to use a word that's kind of outdated. It's not a word that most people know. It's not a word that most people use. So there is a certain amount of responsibility that I have to choose my language so that it will be maximally inclined to be understood.
And
it's
not
also my responsibility as a listener.
Right. Well, I don't get offended
when I don't understand something and presume positive intent.
Well, I don't get offended when people say things have to be spick and span, but that's because I understand the language. And I think that Aya was talking about cultures and that we try and communicate and transfer our thoughts the best and somehow be shaped and reflected by the environment. It needs to be practiced. And the more we get the chance to practice the languages that we speak, the better we can speak. And for that purpose, being patient is important. And I think, Susan Rooks, your attitude is wonderful because you're you've got this amazing curiosity. And I think you approach things rather than with judging, you approach them with curiosity, which I think is an amazing place to start. I can see why you have gotten so big and so famous.
Thank you. I am curious. I mean, I'm on 3 boards of directors just because I'm curious about how these particular entities run, even in my own community. I'm in a beach community. I never knew you put sand back on beaches. I thought beaches came with sand until my first year when they said we're going to be putting down like 47 truckloads of sand. We're going to do what? And the learning curve, I'm amazed by it. And Yonason, what you said earlier, we couldn't have done this in our youth. We could not have sat here and had a threesome with people listening in. I'm in awe of the technology and that I can talk to people in other countries, other worlds, learn from them, see it without it costing me anything on top of it. And
It's
I
amazing.
learn and I get a kick. And the last point, if I hear somebody has an accent, I automatically don't listen the same way I hear an American speaking, because I'm not automatically expecting perfect English, American English, which is different from the rest of the world's English.
Well, do you expect perfect American English from Americans? I mean, really?
No, but I expect closer. I don't expect too many phrases unless I go, all right, I'm a New England girl. I go south, I have moments of, but it's not angry. It's like, what? Because that's not typical language that we use up here. If I go to the Midwest, if I go to the West Coast, all of them have little regionalisms that are fun.
Yeah, and I learned to speak English from the lovely woman, Mrs. Smith, Mama Smith, we called her, and she used the word y'all. So I think I'm one of the few Cubans that says y'all. And do you know the plural of y'all is all y'all?
Oh, okay.
You know,
There we go.
who knew?
I
And so I think there are some charming ways that we speak when we come from different countries or different cultures,
Absolutely.
different neighborhoods, different zip codes. It's lovely.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. My kids still make fun of me because I say the Facebook, the LinkedIn, the YouTube. I know you're supposed to just say YouTube and LinkedIn, but in Spanish, you always have this pronoun, and I don't know. It's hard for me to remember, and they giggle. They're very kind about it, but I can see their eyes smiling when I just said the YouTube, and I caught my granddaughter saying it the other day, and I had to laugh. So, I passed it on.
Yeah, but every language does have its little fun bits here and there. Last story for me, I was working for Fred Pryor seminars back in the 90s, and they sent me to South Africa. Okay, in a million years, I was not expecting to go to South Africa.
Way cool.
I had the best 3 weeks of my life, I tell you. But I was in a taxi, and I said to him, when will I know when we get near the hotel? And he said, ma'am, you'll see the robot in the street. This is 1995, 6 or 7.
Wow.
Traffic signal, green, yellow, red. In 1,000 years, that did not translate. And I laughed, but I thought, see, this is what the adventure is going to be about, because to him, that was a tip. I don't know if anybody right now in South Africa is listening. I don't know if you even still say that. But on that day, he did. And it cracked me up thinking, oh boy, this is going to be a fun ride, because I have no idea what else I'm not going to understand. It was such a great 3 weeks. I can't begin to tell you.
Well, they were lucky to have you. I'm glad you got to experience that. That's very cool. So, Rabbi, do we have a word of the day?
Indeed, we do. And the word for the day is onomatopoeia.
Oh,
Did I mispronounce it?
I should use that one in my word.
No, or you pronounce it the way my 5th grade teacher did.
Yeah.
And the reason I chose that word in honor of our guest, because what is an onomatopoeia? It is a word that sounds like what it is. For instance, boom, or sizzle, or crack. And I particularly like this because in Hebrew, the word for word and the word for thing are the same word. Davar can mean a word. Davar. Davar. In English, you would spell it D-A-V-A-R.
Davar.
Either way, it's a word, it's a thing. And there's a deep idea behind this, because unlike our conception of language, which means we created labels to represent things, on a theological, on a deep philosophical level, the thing is the word is the thing. And it means that we have a responsibility to be very careful the way we use our language. Doesn't mean that words can't evolve, because they do.
They do.
Usage can change, but ultimately, to respect the meaning of words is to respect the integrity of reality, of objectivity, and of intellectual integrity. Because we want to think clearly, we want to speak clearly, we want to communicate clearly, because the more we do, the more peace and harmony and understanding there is in the world between all people. And Susan, I think that you are someone who really contributes to that ideal.
Amazing. Just amazing. Now I got to go look up onomatopoeia and maybe use that this week.
I
And
put it in the chat.
I wrote
put
it down, but I didn't spell it correctly. It's not a word you run into every other day.
No, it isn't. I put it in the chat. I only knew because it was a 5th grade word and I had to spell it. So, Susan, one of the reasons why we were delighted to have you on is we started the Rabbi and the Shrink, because we wanted to further the global discussion on anything that has to do with ethics, including everyday issues such as listening respectfully, learning how to disagree in a productive way. Those things people don't think of ethical elements in a society, but they indeed form not only the foundation, but elevators to the highest level. It's like the sandwich, right? Everything in between, I think, is our effort at it. What advice do you have for us as the grammar goddess of the universe? That's my title I added. You don't say that to you about yourself. You're very modest, but as a grammar goddess, what do you suggest we do in terms of furthering useful discussions that increase meaning and connection?
Boy, I wish I'd gotten this one ahead. Possibly the thing that I do as poorly as many, listen. Listen with an intent to learn. And I'm not making this up like it's from me. I see this in a lot of really smart people when they write blogs. We don't listen. Somebody say, how are you doing? I can give you 30 minutes straight. And you're thinking, I just wanted to know if she's feeling okay. I didn't need to know 9 weeks of background. We don't listen as well as we could. Many of us are eager to jump right in. Somebody took a micro breath. Oh, well, let me just tell you what I'm thinking versus, that was interesting. I liked what I heard. Yeah. And for me, I've learned, Susan, shut up. Let them talk. Not the best I can do on a quick question.
You know what? That is a very profound answer. My father used to say, Margarita, that would have been a good time to ponder the fuzz on your knee, meaning that my pant had a fuzz, meaning shut up you, which you would never say the word. So pondering the fuzz on one's knee. I like that a lot.
Thank you.
Somebody said that everybody knows something that you don't.
Oh, everybody.
So give ourselves the chance to learn from other people. In fact, the sages say, who is wise? The person who learns from every person. And if we aren't listening, we can't learn.
It's hard to. Yeah.
I saw there's something in the chat. Is that?
I was just reading that from Jenny. How can we keep words fresh? And I'll read all 3 questions. Not subject to political silencing. And is it ethical for others to make us use certain words that are not in our vernacular? That's interesting. So let me read them now one at a time. I didn't know how related they were. How can we keep words fresh? All right, the two of you, this is for both of you, Susan and Rabbi.
Say it again.
How do we keep words fresh? How can we keep them fresh?
I'd need more of a question. I'm not sure where that one's going.
Well, let me. It something comes to mind. I came across this a while back. We have this expression juicing for using steroids, or for drug usage. Any idea where the origin of that usage is?
No.
Trivia question of the day. It's from Bob Dylan. He used it. I forget what the song was. I'm not a huge devotee of Dylan, but he used this word, you juiced. He used it as a verb.
Okay.
And created a whole usage that wasn't there before. And this is the fascinating balance. I mean, it's really what ethics is all about. It's striking a balance. We talked earlier about preserving the integrity of words, but at the same time, we want to allow words to take their natural course. And so not forcing them into a usage that really doesn't work, but allowing them to be used. I mean, what is poetry? Poetry is using words in slightly unconventional combinations to create images. And why can't our language be poetic and elegant and creative, even while we maintain the integrity of words' meanings? This allows us to preserve understanding, but still have that freshness of expression that makes it wonderful to engage in verbal expression.
And you just reminded me of something I wrote this morning, because I do a that's a word every morning, a word that I've seen or read or something. M-A-S-K-N-E, maskne. And it isn't in dictionaries. But when you learn that what it refers to is the acne that many people suffer from wearing a mask too long, it's becoming a thing.
Yeah.
And it's over a year old, but I never ran into it before. And I'm thinking, okay, that's a fresh word that isn't a real word yet. But I wouldn't doubt that some dictionary is going to pick it up as representing something about 2020 and 2021, maskne. So I used it. I admit it, it's not in the dictionaries, but how appropriate it is at the moment. And it was
And
just
there is your spirit again. And I think the idea of keeping words or ideas or relationships fresh is to go with the flow a little bit, to not be so judgmental that this is the only way all the time to flow, right?
Yeah, words do to have different meanings sometimes. I mean,
Well, and they develop. And what
They
happened to all the
definitely
hyphens? I mean, really, they're gone now. So I miss my hyphens. I hope, though, those who are out there doing dictionaries, I never want to broom to be a real word. I'm brooming instead of I'm sweeping. Let's not go there. I mean, that one I'll be judgmental about that one. I mean, really, have a broom bias. I don't like that use of the term. Or my bad. I'm hoping that never will be an apology. Truly.
Yeah.
I mean,
that one.
That doesn't work. So the other part is, is it ethical for others to make us use certain words that are not in our vernacular? That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Well, that actually was that's what launched Jordan Peterson to fame. That as a professor at the University of Montreal, I believe, he was told that he had to use certain new invented pronouns to represent groups that didn't previously have pronouns.
Okay.
And his response, I think, was really instructive. He said, it's not like profanity or words that you can't use because they're not socially acceptable. Right? This is because that's saying we need filters. This is actually mandating usage. And he said, if somebody says to me, I would like you to use this particular term, he says, I would do it out of just general respect. But I don't want the government telling me I have to use words that they've made up because of their values. Now, you can agree, you can disagree. But there is, again, going back to Orwell describes a dystopian future where the government controls thought by controlling speech. And it's something that we need to be sensitive to. We have to be concerned with. Because when ideas can no longer be represented in words, when we can't rely on words to represent ideas authentically, then we are facing the breakdown of communication and the breakdown of understanding and the breakdown of wisdom and the breakdown of society. So I think the question was very, very well placed. And it's something that we should, again, it all comes back to that balance.
Yeah. And I think that the rabbi and Susan were both saying the bottom line is respect and connection. So using the pronouns in a way that feels respectful to various people, various groups, using words that aren't offensive, using words that are going to increase somehow connection and meaning. I think we have been blessed by having Susan Rooks, the grammar goddess, here. Thank you again so very much for joining us. You elevate language in ways that is refreshing. So Jenny, one way to keep language fresh is read Susan Rooks. She's got her work of the day. She's got her blog, thegrammargoddess.com. Check her out. If you're writing something and need a fresh look at how to make your messaging reach people, Susan Rooks is the one for you. And I'll put her information one more time in the chat. And that's all I have to say about that is, as one of my favorite characters used to say.
Susan, do you have a final thought you'd like to leave us with?
The final thought, dun, 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 dun.
Dun, 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 dun. I have no final thought except thank you so much for inviting me, Yonason, Rabbi. I'm amazed. I'm tickled to death. It's a topic that's dear to my heart. Having learned a fair bit over these years that I've been here, hope to keep right on learning. Thank you again so much.
And
Thank
my
you,
final
and-
thought is listen to what Susan Rooks just said. If we get excited about learning and listening, and we remain curious, I think all issues regarding language, connectivity, and meaning will resolve themselves over time. Rabbi, if there's a final word from you, I'd love to hear it as well.
Oh, I think I've had my say, and I'll leave the last word to you, Doctor, unless that was it.
Oh, wow. If we were kids, I'd be going, yay, Queen of the Mountain. All right. Everyone, thank you for joining us. And we will see you next Tuesday at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central Time. Good luck, have fun, and remember to listen.